remember the Lagos State government, the Commissioner for Health, they announced that estimation for Lagos by July, about 120,000. So that raised a lot of concern. So let's take a look at some of those figures now. Babajide Ogunsanwo joins us now, data analyst. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Good morning, Aya.
Well, that figure might shock a lot of people, but maybe not based on their algorithm. They think, look, this is what we've seen. What did you see when you looked into it?
Seen a lot of things. Perhaps we should spend a bit of time talking about national cases, and then we'll spend more time talking about what's happening in the states. Based on the updated numbers from the NCDC, 4,399 cases. But this is what it really means, and these are the insights. The first is 48% of those cases are in the northern region of Nigeria. That is the fact. However, the concern is, yes, 143 people sadly have died, but 61% of those that have died are in the north. So it's a strange place we find ourselves. The north has fewer cases of the coronavirus, but it has significantly more deaths. Let's remember that this is not how it all started. On the 27th of February, and when we went into March, almost 100% of the cases were in the southern region. Today, the only 3 states that, based on the NCDC's updated numbers, have 0 cases. First, Anambra. Anambra initially had 1 case, but the patient has been discharged. The second is Cross River State. Still, 0 cases of the coronavirus. But let's not forget that Akwa Ibom was created out of Cross River, and there's the coronavirus in Akwa Ibom. The third state, and that's the final state that has 0 cases of coronavirus, is Kogi. But let's also remember that Kogi was created out from a bit of Benue and Kwara, and we have coronavirus in Benue and Kwara. So one perspective, you could say all the states have had some sort of coronavirus. But if we're looking at the numbers as of today, 0 cases in Cross River, 0 in Kogi, and 0 in Anambra. Well, here's what the research shows.
Yeah.
More than, or perhaps put it in this way, every state, which is one of the causes of the high rising number of deaths in the north, is that every state in the north, apart from Kwara, Kogi, and Benue State, has a poverty rate of above 40%. Apart from Kwara, Kogi, and Benue State, Chamberlain, every other state in the north has severely high poverty rate. Kano, for instance, 55% poverty rate.
Is that a factor?
That is a factor, a big factor. Because when people are poor, for them, a lockdown means nothing.
So that makes them throw caution to the wind?
First is the level at which they understand the coronavirus. Second is their need for basic living items, food,
Isn't that the same thing?
survival.
Isn't that the same thing in even Lagos?
So Lagos has a bit of significant advantage. First is household size in Lagos is smaller than a lot of the northern countries. One way the Lagos State is also fighting this virus is Lagos State has the smallest land area in the country. Only 3,577 square kilometers. So Lagos State is really a small state, even though it has a high population.
So proximity.
And that brings us into Lagos. So looking at Lagos, there are 3 ways I would like to talk about Lagos. The first is to talk about the real origin of the trouble that we face today. Second, we'll talk about the current concerns, and then we'll then look at the forecast in terms of coronavirus from the states. So let's talk about the real origin of the challenges Lagos faces, Chamberlain. And we'll spend probably just about 3 minutes doing that.
Especially concerning this COVID-19?
Especially concerning this COVID-19. A decade and a half ago, President Obasanjo and Governor Tinubu were engaged in some sort of political kung fu 2005. That was a build-up to the census in 2006. In 2006, the census was conducted, and the federal government said Lagos State had a population of just 9.1 million. Lagos State refused. Lagos State said their population was 17.5 million. A significant difference from what the federal government census showed. 9.1 million federal government census. Lagos State census said 17.5 million.
How did Lagos come? I think they conducted the census pari passu at the time.
But there was significant margin of error. And so based on the federal government's own census in 2006, and looking at the population growth rate, annual population growth rate of about 3%, Chamberlain, the estimated population for Lagos today will probably be about 15 million, based on the federal government's own census. But based on the census and the estimates from Lagos State in 2006, Lagos State claims to have a population of above 25 million today. Here's why population is so important, especially for the smallest states in Nigeria. The coronavirus loves population density. And so how do we plan? Will the Ministry of Health or the Presidential Task Force use the population estimates of the federal government, or will they be using the population estimates of the state government? Because you cannot manage the coronavirus without knowing how densely populated the local government areas are.
And so Lagos will have their own figures.
Lagos has its own figures, saying over 20 million. The National Office of Statistics is using different figures. So how do you really estimate how many people are living in Alimosho? How many people are living in Koshofe? How many people are living in Lagos mainland? So that is the origin of the problem. Lack of accurate figures to plan policies and to plan urban development. Point one.
And perhaps also that conflict between those two figures from the center and the federating units, Lagos.
Exactly, Ayo. So the question is, how are the states and the federal government planning population concerns in each of these states that have a high concentration of population? Now that we've seen that the problem really started from a decade and a half ago, the second is what Nigerians are asking. What was the situation in Lagos before the lockdown, and what was the situation during the lockdown? And here's the evidence. Before the lockdown, yes, Chamberlain, remember the first case in Lagos was reported on the 27th of February. By the 30th of March, when we're going into lockdown mode, that was 32 days, Lagos had reported only 81 cases. So between the first case and lockdown day, we had seen 81 cases in 32 days, an average of 3 cases per day. That is the fact. Between when the lockdown started on the 30th of March and when freedom movement started on the 4th of May, 35 days, 1,102 cases.
So now
that's an average of 31 cases per day. So before lockdown, 3 cases per day. During lockdown, 31 cases per day. Here's why it is important. What was the objective of the lockdown? If the objective of the lockdown was for contact tracing,
to slow the spread.
But we never got to know what would have been the scenario, because the fact shows that the number of cases multiplied by 10. Now, here's the forecast, the third point. Now, the commissioner is looking at end of July estimates between 90,000 to 120,000. But to simplify this for a lot of Nigerians, what does this mean? Let's not look at the range. Let's look at the median. That is the 105,000. So plus or minus 15,000. So 90,000 is the lower limit, the upper limit being 120,000. So the median, which is the sweet spot, is an estimate of 105,000 cases. Well, here's the concern. It's 105,000 cases plus or minus 14%. So minus 14% takes you to the lower limit, plus 14% takes you to the upper limit. And in most times, a plus or minus 14% is a huge margin of error. high margin of, you know, when the elections are coming, like the US elections, and you see those polls, you'll see at the bottom that small fine print that usually will state plus or minus 3%. Sometimes plus or minus 5%. So what we see is estimates from the state government that comes with a high margin of error, plus or minus 14%. What this means is, while the state has advised that if things go out of hand, we could see this sort of numbers, it shows that the state is also uncertain about what could happen within the next...
That takes us to the testing, where more than 1 billion legations need to be tested, as you say, if the implication of this 100,000 figure.
So the issue is, how do we get to 105,000? How do you get to 105,000 cases? You're not going to be testing 105,000 people. You're going to be testing as much as 1 million people, because that is the current going rate. So Lagos right now is 155 cases shy of 2,000 cases, testing close to almost 20,000 people. In simple terms, for every 10 people that have been tested, one has come out positive. So if we are looking at 105,000 cases by the end of July, we should also then be expecting that between the next 70 days, 1 million people will be tested. But can that happen?
Oh, well, that is a big question, which perhaps they will pose to
But you know, in the final analysis, what you can see sometimes is more important than what's in front of you.
I'll think about that when I'm driving. Thank you very much indeed, Babajide Ogunsanwo. We're back in a moment. Stay with us. Okay, well, this first feedback comes from Henry, who is talking about the Amajire system. Well, Henry says that, well, Amajire question has continued to haunt Nigeria, even when it took foreigners to remind us that we're abandoning human capital development, the bedrock and compass of human destiny. Let the system be outlawed henceforth, as COVID-19 has showed that it is possible.
Well, Eyosomi also speaks about the same issue, saying that Almajiri system needs the political will and reorientation of parents to send their children to proper organized schools where Arabic studies are taught, and not unapproved educational system that may serve as, he says, a conduit for ISWAP or Boko Haram. FGN must abolish it.
Abiodun Talks 80, still on the same issue, says Amajire issues in northern Nigeria is a big one. I believe the way out is deliberate effort by both federal and northern state governors at enforcing free and accommodating education. Child marriage, which has also contributed negatively, should also be discouraged.
So there you go.
I guess...
Yep. Okay,
you know, one last yeah. And somebody, that's Alfred Mangai, is recommending Babajide to the presidential task force. He thinks he'll be very useful in helping to figure out how to deal with the numbers of COVID-19. Well, that's what he feels.
There you go. Interesting one. But we're also keeping our tabs on the Ministry of Mines and Steels. That report came through from them saying that they were under pressure to release the Chinese who were caught in illegal mining. I know they were asking for special courts, but we're watching to see how they handle that matter, because if you do that, if you budge to the pressure, what happens to everybody else?
Question is, under pressure from where?
All right. So there you go. That's the show today. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain. What's up?
I'm Kaido Hikiolu.
I'm Ayo Makide. Do stay safe.
And I'm Malpe Ogun Yusuf. Thank you for watching.